There's a place He comes to me. Though I'm blind, He helps me see. Though I see dimly in this place, one day I'll see Him face to face.
This is Kurt Kaikkonen, pastor of Calvary Chapel, Waterford, at your neighborhood church. Today on Face to Face, we'll be in the book of Genesis. So grab your Bibles and let's get started. If you want to hear this complete message in its entirety, go to yourneighborhoodchurch.com, where you can download Your Neighborhood Church app at the App Store. And even though Jacob knows that he will die in Egypt, he wants to be buried in the land of the covenant promises near Hebron. And he wants his body to be placed into that burial cave at Machpelah, where Abraham, his grandfather, and Isaac, his father, were there laying in the hope of a resurrection. And so Joseph, he puts his hand under Jacob's thigh and he swears to him. And then Israel, he bows in gratitude. And then Joseph leaves. But it's not long after that Joseph is notified that his father's ill. And the thing is, you see, Joseph, he couldn't be with his father every day because he's working. He's running all of Egypt. And Goshen is not very close to the Egyptian cities. And he knows that this may be the very last time that he sees his father. So Joseph, he brings his two sons. And you have to remember, these two sons are half Egyptian. And so Joseph, he sends a message to his dad, Jacob, and he says, I'm coming. I'm on my way. And Jacob here is 147 years old, and he's not able to get around anymore. And he's in pretty bad shape. But when he hears that he's coming, he gets up enough strength to sit up, because he wants to give his best image. He doesn't want to look so feeble. And so he's sitting there and he's leaning on his staff. And everybody knows that this is goodbye. And when people are dying, they don't waste their words and they don't put off important topics because there's no time left to delay. And so Jacob, he starts telling a story. And Joseph, he's heard this story many times before about God appearing to him in Luz. And Luz is Bethel. And that's the first time that God had appeared to Jacob. And this is not just an old man telling the same old story over and over again. This is Jacob telling this story with a purpose. Because what he's doing here is he's passing down the family blessing. And he uses the same exact words that God had given to Abraham and the same exact words that God had given to Isaac. And they're the same exact words that God had spoken directly to Jacob himself. And that was to be fruitful and to be made into a multitude of people. And it was the giving of the land to their descendants. And then what Jacob does is that he lets Joseph know that he's going to receive the double portion of the inheritance. He's going to receive the right of the firstborn. And the way that Jacob is going to do this is by adopting Joseph's two sons and giving them an equal portion among the other 11 of Joseph's brothers. And when Jacob is adopting them, he says that he's adopting them as his first two sons because he compares them to his first two sons. He compares them to Reuben and to Simeon. And so Joseph's two sons, they are given prominence as the firstborn. And you'll always read that it's the 12 tribes of Israel, but actually there's 13 tribes. There is no tribe called the tribe of Joseph. It'll always be two tribes. It'll be the tribe of Ephraim and the tribe of Manasseh. So every time you read the list of the 12 tribes of Israel, there's always going to be one tribe that is left out. And usually it's the tribe Levi. And that's because Levi became a tribe of priests, and they never received their own special place of inheritance called the land of Levi. They were just giving cities, and they were scattered among all the tribes. And so then Jacob, he tells this story about Joseph's mother, about Rachel, and about her death and about her burial. And though there's only just one little line here about their conversation, I'm going to imagine that they spoke a lot of things about Rachel, because both of these men loved her. And they loved her like nobody else loved her, because one of them loved her as a son and the other one as a husband. And you have to remember, it's already been over 50 years since Rachel died, but there's something special about speaking about someone who's passed away, and that they love that person just as much as you do. And you have these conversations, and nobody else can understand, but you're actually comforted by that other person's love for the same person. Where when you miss them together, you have this special bond. And Jacob, he doesn't have this with anybody else. He doesn't even have it with Rachel's other son, Benjamin, because Benjamin never knew his mom. So this is something special. It's a very special moment that they're sharing. And nobody would be able to understand this moment in the very same way that they do. But you have to see here now, Jacob, he is almost blind. And now he just notices, Joseph's been there for a while, but now he notices that there's other people that are with him, and he couldn't tell who they were. And so he says, well, who are they? Who are these? And even if he could see them, they would look like just a couple of Egyptians. They would look like Joseph, because they would have been dressed just like Joseph. They would have been dressed like Egyptian royalty. And Joseph says to him, he says, these are my sons God has given me in this place. And that kind of makes you wonder if Jacob had ever seen them before. But I probably imagine he has. I'm just guessing that Jacob is just getting that blind. And you look at this, these are not little boys. These are both men in their mid-20s. And Joseph here, he's about 56 years old. And Jacob tells Joseph to bring them near, because he wanted to bless them. And what he does is he sneaks in a kiss, because that's what grandparents do. They bring them in and then they sneak a kiss on them. And these boys are raised more like Egyptians than Hebrews. And they may not understand the importance of what's about to happen to them, because you have to remember, these boys have been raised at the highest level of Egyptian society. Their mother is actually the daughter of an Egyptian priest. So they may want to naturally draw back away from this old man and letting this old man touch them, unless they have some kind of understanding of how great this man is from their father. And so the adoption ceremony, it begins, where Jacob, he stretches out his hands to give this special blessing on Joseph's two boys. And so I imagine this as Jacob, he's sitting there on the bed, and these two boys are standing before Jacob, and they're bowed down. And Joseph, because this is a solemn experience, he's bowed with his face to the ground, and he's not watching where his father is placing his hands. And Joseph is he's placed these boys in their birth order before his blind father. So Manasseh, he's placed at Jacob's right hand to receive the blessing of the firstborn, because the right hand represents the favored position. It's the hand of power. It's the hand of strength. And that's because most of us are right-handed. And Ephraim, he would receive the lesser blessing. He would receive the blessing from Jacob's left hand. And then Jacob, he gives this beautiful benediction, and he's calling on the God of his father, Abraham and Isaac. And then he says, the God that fed me. And the word that he uses there is Jehovah Ra. And what it actually means, the God who shepherded me. And that's the same word that's used for Psalm 23, where it says, the Lord is my shepherd. It's the same exact word, Jehovah Ra. And then he calls this same God the angel who redeemed me, which is the pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus Christ. and when he did that to Jacob. And this word redeemed he uses here is the Hebrew word goel. And this is the first time the word redeemed is ever used in the Bible. And he says, and this is that angel that wrestled with him. And that's the one who actually redeemed him. He redeemed Jacob. And the way that he redeemed Jacob was by beating him. He dislocated Jacob's hip and he forced Jacob to give up because that was the only time when Jacob surrendered his life to the angel. And then in this adoption, Jacob, he puts the name of his God on these boys. And then when Joseph looks up, he thinks his father's having a senior moment because Jacob's crossing his hands. And Joseph, he sees his father's right hand on the younger son Ephraim's head. And so Joseph, he goes over there and he physically grabs his hand and he tries to remove his hand and put it on Manasseh. But it's too late. The blessing has been given. And this reminds us of when Jacob stole the birthright blessing. And then when Esau came back to receive the blessing, he said, there's nothing left to bless because God was in it. Nothing could be done now. God was in that blessing because it was of God. And this act, just like that act, it wasn't a senior moment. This was a God moment because God was directing Jacob in what he was doing and where he was placing his hands. Jacob knew who he was blessing because God had shown Jacob that Ephraim, that even though he's the youngest, he's going to be the greater nation. In fact, he'll be the father of nations. And we actually see that later because the tribe of Ephraim becomes the greatest tribe and he becomes the head of all the 10 tribes of the northern tribes of Israel. In fact, those northern 10 tribes, they're called by the name Ephraim. And Joseph, he really shouldn't be surprised by this because God has been consistent about reversing the birth order ever since Abraham's sons. Because you have to remember, Isaac, he was the younger, but he was chosen above Ishmael, the older. And Jacob, he was the younger, and he was given the birthright instead of Esau, the older. And here it's the same. Ephraim is picked. And he's picked above his older brother, Manasseh. And that's because God often picks the less likely candidate. That's why he picked most of us. Nobody else would pick us because God, he sees people's hearts. He also sees who has a heart for him. He knows the people that he can work through. And people with birth orders, they think they have some type of right for a position. But in the kingdom of heaven, it's always God's choice, and it's always by his grace. And he always seems to be choosing the lowly. And here by Jacob blessing Joseph's sons, this is how Jacob has truly blessed Joseph. And then the chapter ends with Jacob giving a special piece of land that he said he took from the Amorites with his own bow.
You've been listening to Face to Face. Face to Face on this radio station has been provided by Your Neighborhood Church. If you want to help support Face to Face and put this program on other stations just like yours, you can contact us at yourneighborhoodchurch.com or write Your Neighborhood Church, P.O. Box 500, Romeo, Michigan 48065.
There's a place he comes to me. Though I'm blind, he helps me see. Though I see dimly in this place, one day I'll see him face to face.
Tune in again tomorrow at this same time as we continue to go through the Bible.